You mentioned Purdue. We're going to segue right over to the Boilers, who last season went 29-8. They were 14-6 in the Big Ten. That was good enough for third in the conference. They were second in scoring offense in the Big Ten with 79 points per game. They were seventh in points allowed in the conference with 68 points per game. They lost the Big Ten tourney title game to Iowa. They made the Sweet 16, defeating Yale and Texas before being upset by the Cinderella upstart St. Peter's Peacocks. They got peacocked last year. This season,
a lot of people.
That is true. This season, they're notable returnees. I mean, they lose a lot from the roster from years past, but they do get Zach Edey back, who averaged 14 points per game, leader amongst returnees. He was the 2021 leader in rebounds and blocks. Some of the guys they lost, obviously, Jaden Ivey's on the Pistons now. Trevion Williams is gone. Sasha Stefanovic is gone. Looking at their notable matchups, they will be at home against number 13 IU and number 23 Illinois, and on the road against number 22 Michigan and number 13 IU. So, you
don't even mention in there in the notable matchups that Purdue is taking part in the notable PK 90, I think it's called, the Phil Knight tournament, like the dual tournaments. So Purdue has an opportunity to potentially play Tennessee, Gonzaga. I think Xavier is in there. There's quite a few. It's a loaded field as usual. Right. So, but you don't know who they're going to play because it's one of those. But that's like extremely notable. They're going to go out there and it's going to be they're going to take their lumps in that one for sure.
Yeah, and actually that would be good, and that tournament could say a lot of things because. I was going to make the comment that it almost seems reversed from what we've seen in the past. We talked about how we normally give IU some crap because, their non-conference schedule isn't very good. Outside of that tournament and how deep they can go, that's kind of how it is for Purdue. Usually we're used to seeing some scheduled matchups, not just like through the course of a tournament, but some scheduled matchup against, not ranked. Not against ranked teams.
No, not ranked, but, it is teams that you could potentially see in the tournament. We're talking like Florida State again. They go to Florida State, they host Marquette, and then they have a neutral site game against Davidson. So, they do have teams like Florida A&M, but that's those always happen. But they're not playing as many preseason ranked teams, but it's still teams that are notable in the fact that oh, yeah, I've actually heard of that team.
Yeah, I just think that normally we're used to seeing them play one or two scheduled ranked non-conference games, as opposed to now. Of course, you can't help it. I don't know how far in advance the
pretty
ACC.
Far in advance.
Well, the ACC Big
Marquette,
10.
Yeah, ACC Big 10 Challenge is scheduled in the summer.
Okay,
and
so
you're that one you have no control over. And then the same thing with the Gavitt tip-off games, I think it is. Is it? Yeah. Is that the Big 10 Big East Challenge? Yeah. And we always seem to – so Purdue just seems unlucky in drawing the fact that every year they draw Marquette or Florida State here as of late. It feels like we've played Marquette and Florida State for 5 consecutive years.
Hey, go.
And it's getting old.
We talk conference expansion. Get them in the Big 10. Get him in the Big 10 right now, since that seems to be a game they play a lot. But
those are good games though for this team. It's a young team. It's not as experienced as IU. So where you would want to see IU, they're doing. Where you want to see Purdue with a young, inexperienced team, they're not playing cakewalk games, but they're playing games that are going to get them prepared.
Yeah.
Still.
And that gets us right into our hot or cold question for Purdue, which is hot or cold. Purdue will finish in the bottom half of the Big Ten this season. For me, that's actually a cold take. I wavered back and forth. I wasn't for sure, whether I thought, because we've gone back and forth. They lose so much from what they've had the last few years. There's a lot of uncertainty, but also we've talked about the Big Ten being not as good as it's been maybe in years past. This squad reminds me a lot of the 2019-2020 team, the last Boiler team. that finished the year in the bottom half of the conference. After that Elite Eight run with Carson Edwards, you can disagree all you want. This is just my take. If I recall,
I know.
it was a relatively young team that had to go through some growing pains, but they still finished the season 9-11, 10th in the Big Ten. And that was a season in which 6 Big Ten teams finished. That was a season in which 6 teams finished ranked in the Big Ten. However, their schedule is maybe the lightest it's been, like I mentioned, in regards to tough out-of-conference games that are scheduled. And ESPN's analysts are in agreement that Purdue will still finish in the top 5 of the conference. So I looked at the conference preview for ESPN, and like a lot of people still had them like 4th or 5th. So I was swayed a little bit by the experts because I was like, well, they're experts, so they know more. They know more than I do, at least. So I was like, okay, well, even in a year where they lost, like, and I think I know why you're shaking your head, because even though they lost Carson Edwards, they still had Trevion Williams, Sasha Stefanovic. They still were in a much better place than they were maybe this season. But I still think
I think
they were able
this
to still
season they're in better position now than they were then.
They were still able to work through it and still finish at 500 the Big Ten. So I think with a weaker Big Ten, this team will still go through their growing pains, but I still think they'll finish in the top half of.
So I agree with you. I do think they will finish in the top half of the Big Ten. I disagree with the part that they're very similar to that 2019-2020 team, mostly because Zach Edey is like eons better than Matt Harms ever was. Matt Harms, I mean, he transferred for a reason. I feel like this team has a little bit better of an identity than that team did, and they have leaders. That team did not have any leaders really at that time. But the reason I think Purdue finishes in the top half is their schedule is a little bit easier, and the Big Ten is lighter. It's not as strong this year. But Purdue is slowly rounding into a very similar team, not like playing style, but you can overlook them and all of a sudden it's like, wait, where did this Purdue team come from at the end of the season in the Big Ten race to those Bo Ryan-led Wisconsin teams? They could come into a season totally unranked, totally overlooked, and then all of a sudden, boom, they're right there in contention for the Big Ten title year in and year out. Why was that? Bo Ryan was one of the best X's and O coaches at the time. Now, Matt Painter, experts are calling him this. The experts are calling Matt Painter the best X's and O's coach in all of college basketball. And you are starting to see that from him. He has matured so much as a coach over these last several years. Before, it was he had a certain type of player. If he didn't have that type of player, it just kind of fell apart. Now he's learning how to mold his system around the players that he has. And he kind of got a little too loose with it last year and maybe even the year before. And he's kind of reeled the reins back in a little bit now. And he's starting to get those types of players again that are the Purdue and Matt Painter way type players. I mean, obviously, Indiana Mr. Basketball, Braden Smith, is a clear example of that. I mean, this is a hard-nosed kid that most people don't look at for his shooting abilities, but he's pretty good at it. He's, basketball IQ through the roof. He's going to be the starting point guard for the Boilers. And that's not an easy thing to do as a freshman, to start as a point guard in the Big Ten. But the way Matt Painter is able to get the most out of his teams when he has the types of players with high basketball IQs, those are the teams that are tough. And those are the teams that are tough outs for other teams because Matt Painter just gets the most out of them. I think where Purdue floundered the most last year was that they had to figure out how to handle the talent of Jaden Ivey. Jaden Ivey's talent wasn't built for college basketball. It was built for the NBA. And it was really kind of hard to do, especially when like the style at Purdue and in the Big Ten is really team-oriented passing and this, that, and the other. And, that trying to juggle all of that, I think got in the way. Whereas this year, it's going to be more what we have come to expect from Purdue basketball in the past. and that's what helps them finish in the top half of the Big Ten. I honestly think this is a team that can finish top 3 in the Big Ten, to be honest. I think they're going to surprise some people. If they can clean up some of the mistakes that we saw from them last year, like the turnover issues and things like that, and to play a little bit harder nosed defense, which I think they will. They've been working really hard on that, and they looked really good. And also, you got to look at their front court. IU has TJD. Purdue's front court is stacked. You got third team preseason All-American Zach Edey at center. You got Caleb First, another Indiana Mr. Basketball, who's going to be his backup. You've got Trey Kaufman-Renn, who was a top 40 recruit we had so many players that he redshirted last year. And then utility man, do-it-all type player, Mason Gillis. So that front court is probably arguably one of the best in the Big Ten. So that's going to be really interesting. It's all going to come down to guard play for Purdue. They got transferred David Jenkins out of Utah. He's not a true point guard. You got 2 freshmen that are able, or at least one freshman that's able to shoot lights out, and Fletcher Lawyer, who's probably going to be one of the best shooters in the country. So you've got the pieces there. It's just how quickly can the pieces gel together, and if they can gel together over the course of this non-conference schedule, the Boilers are going to be a tough outcome Big Ten play.
And I think you hit the nail on the head, because when you have a coach like Matt Painter, I think it does, give you a little bit of an edge, and that boosts their development just that much more, because you have one of the better coaches, not just in the Big Ten, maybe the best coach in the Big Ten, and then one of the better coaches in the country. So you even in a year where you expect, okay, there's going to be some growing pains, there's going to be some doubt, you still have one of the best coaches who's going to, boost their development and make them, a much more competitive team all that much more sooner.